Is anyone left?
All right. Hey, Facebook.
Watching?
Hey, YouTube. Hey, everybody on the WWW. It's great to have you back with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited. We got a good topic for you today. We're feeling a little out of our groove today. The rhythm is not really here, so please bear with us. We look cool, hip and trendy.
Cool.
We both unintentionally wore black together because we matched a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
You should go back and watch it if you haven't yet.
Although it's not hard for us to match because we don't have a lot of colors in our wardrobe.
Exactly. Odds are every couple days we're just going to re-sync up. So we're I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah, we're diving in. We got a good topic today. And we're going to welcome our recording audience, and then we'll dive into the whole topic. But while we're doing that, do us a huge favor. Share the feed on your page. Good topic today. We are talking about, God, are you punishing me? So nice light topic for your Wednesday morning commute. But, you know.
I think everybody can relate to it.
And we're going to get after it.
Yep.
So here we go. Give us 1 second as we welcome our recorded audience, and we'll dive in. All right, here we go. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out this week's episode of the Discipleship Track podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Rob, joined, as always, by the awesome Patsy Prouty. Patsy, say what's up.
My people, how are you?
Hey, and we are here because we believe that God has called us to live a life that is fully devoted to Him. But here's the thing. In order to do that, we got to put in a little bit of work. It's not going to happen on its own. So we create these podcasts almost each and every week so that we can grow together. So we hope you take us with you wherever you are, whether you're walking the dog, dropping the kids off at school, cooking in the kitchen, exercising at the gym, wherever it may be. We want to be there with you so that we can grow on the go together. So we're going to dive right into our topic today because we are making a commitment that we are going to try our best to be done in 20 minutes or less. 20 minutes. What's that food that
2-0
that place that you used to go, the restaurant where they guarantee 20 minutes or less?
Oh, wasn't it a delivery?
Delivery.
Or Domino's. Yeah.
That's not a paid endorsement or anything like that. But
obviously, it didn't work out for them because they're not doing it anymore.
Apparently, that didn't go so well.
They're giving away too many free pizzas.
At least they're not Pizza Hut, though. Could be worse.
Did they go out of business?
No, I just saw one yesterday. That's why I was thinking about them.
Because we had
one
not
here
far
by
from
us.
Here. We had one by us, and it went out of business, which was weird. Okay.
Well, that's because it was very shady.
Sorry. This is just random information.
Yeah, hey, welcome to our pre-show. So, hey, you know what? Let's get this train back on track real quick. Dive into the topic today.
On track. So if you guys are faithful followers, you know that we are in the middle of a series in our church called Why, and we're studying the book of Job. And last week, we were addressing the question of suffering, like, you know, God, why am I suffering?
Yep.
And afterwards, in our, what do we call it, the after show?
The after show. Oh, no.
Aftershock?
Was it the bonus content?
Bonus content, maybe.
Hey, fun fact. If you have not followed us on YouTube, you're missing out on some bonus content that we create almost every single week. You're going to be blown away by this bonus content, let me tell you. But you should follow us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and all those kind of things. If you're watching us on Facebook, head over to YouTube. If you just search in the YouTube thing for the Discipleship Track podcast, we're actually like the first thing that pops up. It's pretty sweet. But you're going to miss out on some bonus content. So go do that. Go ahead.
So yeah, definitely do that. But one of the things that we realized when we were doing the podcast is we didn't address the big, you know, elephant in the middle of the room in the book of Job, is that Satan played a great part in the suffering of Job.
Yep.
Because we get this look behind the curtain and this behind the scenes shot of what goes on, you know, in the heavenly realms. And the conversation is really important because a lot of people fall into the trap, because we're talking about the traps, about suffering and what the point of it is and, you know, how do you get through it? And first and foremost, always remember, when you're suffering, this is not what God intended. God wanted our lives to be good and perfect and great relationship and healthy and all of that. This mess that we're living in is a result of sin, a result of fallen humanity. Right. So Satan, evil, the forces of darkness, all of that wants to piggyback on that, jump on top of that, and make you suffer even more. So there's kind of this behind the scenes conversation that happens where Satan actually goes before God and God's like, hey, you ever check out my guy Job? He really loves me. And Satan's like, yeah, he only loves you because you're good to him. He only loves you because you give him everything. So there's this conversation back and forth, and Satan seems to be the author of the suffering of Job. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I think we read that, and this is the most extreme case, and the forces of darkness are always working against you. Make no mistake about that. But we can tend to even use that as a crutch, right? And say like, oh, it's always, it's because of Satan. We never want to think it's because of my own behavior or because of anything that went on. But what are your thoughts about that? Have you ever in your life had a time where you were like, this is just totally like the dark forces working against me, and my suffering is not because of my own behavior or because of someone else's?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something you want to share or no?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I don't have like a specific, this happened to me yesterday moment, but I think just the reality of our callings and professions in life of being involved in church ministry.
Yep.
You can disagree with me if you want. That's totally fine. But I believe that when you have that title of a church worker, whatever it may be, you take that on, and the jersey that you wear has a big target on the back.
Yep.
And if you think about it, it makes total sense because, of course, the enemy wants to do whatever he can to distract, discourage, to take you down, because you don't just impact yourself, you impact everyone that is connected with you in the areas of ministry that you serve. So there are so many times where my wife and I, and thankfully we don't always get this right, and I wish we were better at it. But there's a lot of times where we'll just start fighting. And I know it's hard to believe, and nobody else ever fights with their spouse.
I can't imagine anyone
I'm
fighting
sorry.
with you, Rob.
I'm just being real here. But every once in a while, we will fight, and we'll catch ourselves because we're like, wait a minute, we're fighting about absolutely nothing right now.
Yep.
But it's like escalating to, oh my gosh, this is almost unforgivable. And thankfully, not all the time, but a lot of times now we're starting to pick up on it early enough to be like, hang on a second.
Right.
This is not the issue. The issue is the fact that we have someone whose sole purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so we kind of stop ourselves and step back and say, let's remember who the real enemy is here. Because when it's very vague, that's what I've found. And my wife, I found that when the argument and when the struggle is very vague, it's usually because, like it says in the Bible, that Satan is a master of confusion, right? Yeah. So, if it's very vague of what it is and you can't really put your finger on it, odds are it's usually going to be...
Yeah, it's like a spiritual warfare thing that's going on in your life. But what a great reminder about living consciously. Make sure you're living consciously and you don't let the vague become, the core of why you guys are tearing each other apart in your house, in your friendships, whatever it is. Live consciously, knowing that there is somebody out there that is absolutely trying to trip you up. So, and that's just something that we wanted to address at the beginning of this, to know that there's definitely a spiritual realm that goes on all around us, and like you said very well, that Satan's gig in life is he wants to seek you out, and he wants to destroy you, wants to destroy your life, wants to destroy the work of God in your life. The most important thing to remember about all of this is whatever is going on, whatever suffering is going on in your life, whether it's by the suggestion in the hand of the enemy himself, or if it's by your own hand, God is not unaware of it. It's not like he looked at his calendar and he was like, oh, wow, I didn't know this was going to happen to Patsy today.
Totally.
Somebody should have sent me a memo to remind me. Totally, he knows what's going on. So live consciously in that and turning to God in your suffering. So this is the lead in to what we want to really talk about today is, God, why are you punishing me? And that's really the big question. And the reason that many of us think God is punishing us is because sometimes friends are the one who suggests that to us. And that's what happened to Job. Yeah. So he's in the midst of horrific suffering. Friends show up. First, they sit with him quietly. That was probably their best move. And then they start to interject into their lives. Why, this is going on in your life because of, and that's definitely happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you.
Totally. And you know what's so hard? I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
Is that okay?
Go.
You know what's so hard? I feel bad for Job's friends in this story because I feel like they get a really bad rap.
Yes, they do.
We read it from years and years later, and we look at them and we're like, what idiots, how could they do this?
They're so mean.
But let's take an honest look at ourselves, right? And how many times have we put our foot in our mouths when we're talking to our friends and trying to help them through something that they're going through, where we say the dumbest things that we think are going to fix I can remember, I replay these moments in my mind all the time with my wife's dad, my father-in-law, because his wife passed away. My wife's mom passed away, and I remember one day going to him when it just happened. It was the next day, and I did that total Christianese pastor thing of wow, God must really trust you to allow you to go through this unbelievable struggle in your life. And looking back, I'm like, what the heck are you thinking? Like, what is that really going to do?
Right.
And how does that make anything any but the guy just lost his wife, his best friend since they were in junior high. And that's what I said to him. Like, that's what I thought was going to make it all better.
But you know your heart at that moment.
Absolutely.
Was in the right
but that's
place.
why I'm saying, like, I got to have a little more compassion for Job's friends in this, because
absolutely.
I got to believe their hearts were, first of all, their hearts had to be in the right place or they wouldn't be sitting there with him through this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's
they genuinely
the story,
wanted to help.
They sit with him for 7 days and say nothing, and they're just heartbroken, and they are like mourning over what's happening to him too. So they absolutely loved him.
Yes.
But I think that's the problem, is when you get in the middle of somebody's mess, you can let it can get away from you, and you can start to drift away from what we really know is true about God. And all of a sudden you're starting to pass off your advice as if it's God's advice. I have to, true confessions, my poor husband, if you're watching, I have done this to my husband so many times. Like, if he's annoying me, I'm like, God's really not pleased with you right now. Like, I'm his spokesman. And that's the truth, and it's so wrong. And while that's funny, there's a lot of truth in that. There's been plenty of times where I have tried to pass my advice off, and telling someone why they're going through something in their life is because of, their behavior, or, well, you're not spending enough time in prayer, or you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I look back on it and I think, oh, shut up, Patsy. Like, why are you even speaking? But that's how we grow, right? You look back, we get to look back at Job's friends.
That's right.
And we get to see what they did, and we can grow from it. And I know I want to be better from today forward at not passing off my advice or my thoughts as God's word. And there's a danger in that. So, helpful hint number 1 today.
Here we go.
Before you pass it off as God's word, make sure you find it in God's word.
Hot take. Come on, that'll preach.
Exactly. Like,
preach.
put that out there, hashtag that, but make sure that you find it in God's word first. And whatever you deliver to your friend who is suffering, because that's what we're talking about, someone who's in the midst of suffering, whether it's you or the friend that you're trying to speak into, do not deliver them God's word like a brick in the face. Just be there, be compassionate, and make sure what you're giving them is accurate.
I think a great example of that is because that is such a perfect number 1 for people to understand, because we like to talk so much when people are going through hard times. And I think that could not be more important for us to understand, that you better make sure that if you're saying it's in the Bible, that it's actually in the Bible. And that what you're saying it says is actually what it means. Right? Like, the perfect example that comes to mind right away with that is when people say, oh, well, it says in the Bible that God's not going to give you any more than you can handle. Right? Like, we love to say that when people are in a hard time. We're like, don't worry. It's
it won't get any
hard
worse
right now, but you can handle it because God's not going to give you any more than you can handle. Fun fact, you can't find that verse in the Bible. It's not there. Right? And so there's make sure it's in there, and make sure it says what it actually says, because usually what people are talking about is the no temptation has seized you or come over you, except
that's
God
uncommon
is faithful.
to man.
He won't let you be tempted beyond what. That's totally different. Than going through something like this that's happening in our life, whether it's grief, whether it's loss, whatever it may be. So please be sure. Like, I know I'm very adamant about this, but it's because the amount of people that have come to me that have had this wound because of these words, make sure you know that if you are going to give Bible advice, that it's actually in the Bible, and it's saying what you think it's going to say.
Better to say, I can't imagine it getting any worse, but I promise you this, God says he'll never leave you, because that is in the Bible.
Exactly.
Because it may get worse for your friend. And also, too, here's another like hot takeaway, whatever you want to call it. Give yourself permission to say to your friend, I don't know why this is happening to you, but I'll stay with you through it. I'll cry ugly with you. I'll sit with you while you go through your pain. And I hope it doesn't get any worse, but I'm not going to guarantee you that. And please don't guarantee people, oh, you're going to be healed if you do this. And if you say this many prayers or you give this much money, everything's going to turn around. Please do not give that advice. I'm talking to you out there, whoever you are, person that's telling people it's, if you do this, this will happen. That's not always true. So please don't give that advice. Don't give those guarantees. Only God himself can give those guarantees.
That's right.
And it is okay. And I think it's even more like it takes your friendship to a deeper level. If you're with a friend who's suffering and you say to them, I don't have the words for you, but I'll sit by your side. That would mean so much more to me than someone coming at me with like a list of 20 things that these are the possibilities of why this is happening to you. And here's what you have to do to fix it and make it better. So another thing too about when we're suffering and our question is, why are you punishing me? It's not always a punishment. right? Sometimes it's a consequence of your action. And I don't mean God just zapping you. Sometimes, we've lived a lifestyle where we've maybe abused our body in a certain way, and then you're dealing with an illness because of that. Yeah, that could be absolutely a consequence of a behavior in your life. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a punishment from God.
Yeah.
So don't assign everything as a punishment.
Totally. And I think even understanding, and again, you can disagree with me on this. Anybody
I
can.
disagree with them all the time.
Exactly. I'm used
Do
to
it.
it.
It's fun.
But sometimes I don't think it's a punishment from the sense of, like you were just saying, God's wagging his finger at you saying, I'm going to strike you down.
Right.
But I do think it's a punishment from the standpoint of God will give you what you think you want.
Oh, yeah. That's why
And
someone said, be careful what you ask for.
You will discover that it is actually a punishment.
Right.
Because that is not what you needed.
Right.
You thought you just wanted it.
Right. And if it truly is a punishment from God, anything that God does in your life or allows in your life or causes in your life, if you love the Lord, it is for your discipline so that you will get back on track with him. Hence the whole reason we created the Discipleship Track.
Yep.
We want people to be on track, to be walking through their life, not a life that's free of problems.
Totally.
But if there's a discipline coming into your life or a punishment, air quotes, punishment coming into your life, stop and ask God, how do I get back on track with you? How do I walk through this so that I'm on track with you, so that I learn the discipline that you want me to learn?
That's right.
I want to say something else too.
Yeah.
Sometimes in your suffering, where we're saying it's not a punishment and no one's, yelling at you or telling you this is what you're doing wrong. What your suffering can impact someone else's life. So it doesn't always have to be wasted. This came to my mind because you said what you said to your father-in-law.
Okay.
I'm not saying don't run out there and give people that advice like, oh wow, God is really trusting you. But sometimes it can be something's happening in your life and it might impact somebody else. So this morning, I have my own little personal situation that's going on, and I really was praying in my quiet time going, God, really, I don't think I can take much more. This is really, really hard. But I want to use it for your glory. I want to go through it well. I want it to have a purpose. Like, I don't want to suffer and have no purpose. P.S. Within like an hour of that prayer, I'm on the phone with a dear, sweet friend of mine who's going through her own thing in her life. I say something she asked me about me. I tell her something about me. She started to cry. She goes, oh my gosh, you just opened my eyes. What you're going through makes sense in my problem.
Wow,
so
great.
That whole long story to get to this point, suffering doesn't always have to be wasted. Your own personal suffering can impact someone else. I'm not saying beg for suffering, but if you're going through something and it's not a punishment, look for the opportunities that maybe it's going to help somebody else. Maybe it is going to impact somebody else. It makes it a little bit easier to go through the tough times. It doesn't mean your tough time is going to go away.
Totally.
So maybe that helps answer the why question a little bit.
That's great.
So what advice can we give to friends, people who want to be a good friend? Let's give them maybe 3 points of how to be a good friend to someone else in suffering.
Sure.
Just a straight takeaways.
Well, I think you gave the
we
first
said
one.
the Bible, yep.
Make sure, the whole Bible one. I think the other one, and we touched on it already, but I would say be present over perfect, right?
Ooh, like that.
Like, just make sure that you're there for them, but you're not always trying to be perfect with everything that you do, everything that you say. Like, don't completely avoid the situation because you don't think you're going to be able to help them.
Yeah.
Even just being present, like you said, and saying to them, like, look, I can't fix this and I can't answer the questions, but I can sit here and weep with you, and I can sit here and just be wrestling with this with you, and I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
I
think another thing that's important too is listen to the person who's suffering.
Yes.
Really listen to what their needs are and be willing. Like, if you're going to get into their mess, be willing to go the long haul with them, because people might have a need and you might be able to be the person that can take care of that for them. It might just be like, hey, you're suffering right now. Let me pick your kids up from school so that you don't have to go out and do it. Things are rough in your life right now. Show up with dinner for them. I mean, it can just be macaroni and cheese and hot dogs, but like, if they don't have to cook it, that's going to be a pretty cool thing to do for somebody.
That's right.
So have your listening ear turned on and see how you can meet a need for someone who's suffering without being invasive. Because that's another thing too. When people are suffering, they don't necessarily want you all up in the ugly with them.
That's right.
You got to know your boundaries.
That's right. Yeah,
So.
exactly. And I think it's important to recognize that what you would want in those situations doesn't mean that's what everyone wants in those situations, right? Like,
That's
were
important.
a lot of times, because again, we've shared this on the podcast a lot, but where our family went through a lot of grieving seasons and really rough times, and our friends and family were amazing, but then there were some times where people would come and they would just force themselves on us to be like, no, you need this, or you need me to sit with you. And we were like, okay, like, I guess this is about you right now, like, not about us, because we really don't, like, we just want a moment to ourselves. But they were so adamant, like, no, you're avoiding, no, you're this, no, you're that, I'm going to do this anyway. And it didn't make anything any better. It actually made it worse.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I have a great example of someone who did it right, and she probably doesn't think she did it right, but my sister-in-law, Lydia, a couple years ago, I broke my jaw and had to have my jaw wired shut.
That.
I really, dentists out there, think of something better, because it is the most barbaric thing in the world to have your jaw wired shut. But like, I was maybe 6 days in, I was home, and that was when it hit me, and it was so barbaric, and I was crying. Now, jaw wired shut, clenched, very difficult to cry.
Yeah.
And, you know, in our house, we have an open door policy. Of course, my sister-in-law, Lydia, who's truly a sister to me, walks in the house, and I'm having like an epic meltdown and can't breathe because my jaw is clenched. She totally didn't know what to do. We made eye contact across the room. Like, here's in the midst of horrific suffering for me. And she looked at me and she started to cry, and she was just like, I love you. I just don't know what to do. But she knew I needed to be alone.
Yeah.
And she loved me enough to just say, I love you, and to turn and walk away. And that, Lyd, is exactly what I needed in that moment, because I needed to keep on crying.
Exactly.
I didn't want to have to like get myself all together and make it all pretty for my sister-in-law who wanted to help me. Instead, she loved me enough to just say she needs this time with God. And she just said, I love you. And she walked away. And that was okay. It was a beautiful thing. Sometimes give people that space.
That's right.
But I think that takes a lot of courage. I think that takes more courage than staying, going, let me be with you. I think it takes more courage to just say, I think you need that time alone.
Yeah, 100%. It's like when you're driving in the car with someone, I always like to joke that I think a real test of friendship is if you can drive in the car and not feel like you have to fill every square inch of quiet space.
And we had that moment
we
here,
did.
remember?
We were just like, we don't have
we
to
could be quiet together.
But I think that it takes courage, because there's a vulnerability in that.
Right.
And I think the same thing is true when you're walking through those kind of moments with your friends. If you're willing to walk
Can
away.
you see that I'm walking through a moment right now, because I'm like literally about to burst into flames.
Walking in a moment. Well, okay, because it's second summer here in New Jersey again. And guess what? Tomorrow's going to be 30 degrees colder.
I have to be real. That it's like,
you are very real.
I'm dripping with sweat right now.
Good to know. Thank you so much. On that note, we are out of time. And I think it's good that we are out of time, because who knows where this conversation is going.
We are talking about suffering. You have to end on a happy note.
That's right. But hey, you know what? We hope that this was something, maybe minus the last minute of this, but we hope that the other 20 minutes were something that was beneficial to you and helps you, because I believe, and we believe, that all of us are walking through difficult seasons of life all the time. So that's why we want to help equip you as best as we can to help you know how to handle those seasons for yourself and to walk through those seasons with other people. So I hope this was something that was beneficial to you. But we want to hear from you. If it is or it isn't, if you would like us to talk about something else, we want to know. So a couple ways to get in touch with us. Number one, you can leave a comment in our Facebook video. If you're watching us on Facebook right now, if you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you want to reach out to us on email, you can email us at Discipleship Track at powerhousecc.org. But we want to hear from you, whether you like what we're talking about, whether you want us to talk about something different, if you have a future episode suggestion, a comment, something you want clarified, all those different ways you can reach out to us so that we can connect with you. But we want to hear from you, so please connect with us. We'd really appreciate that. And we'd also really appreciate it if you would help us by sharing these videos, these podcasts, the words that we're talking about, share them on your social media outlets as well, because we really want to grow the community of people that are committed to living a life that is fully devoted to Him. So please hit that subscribe button, hit the share button, like it, all those kind of things, so that we can grow that community here. With that, any
love
last
you
words?
guys.
Yeah, with that,
really
I think that's
it
for today, and we hope you had an awesome week, and we can't wait to catch you next week on the Discipleship Track podcast.